We will go ahead and get our program started, and I think you're going to enjoy it a great deal. Our guest speaker today is Rich Pisarkiewicz, and we've had a lot of fun talking about sports, but more importantly, we're here to talk about the Muny today. So Rich is eminently qualified to act as the Muny's one and only official docent. He's performed at the Muny for 29 seasons, encompassing 67 productions. He has shared the stage with Howard Keel, Florence Henderson, Mary Wicks, Tony Randall, Juliet Prowse, Theodore Bickle, Tommy Tune, and others. Among his favorite Muny roles are Edgar Bean from Titanic, Mr. Smee in Peter Pan, Stew Pot in the South Pacific. He played the innkeeper in Fiddler on the Roof, and of course Drake in Annie. Rich has also made his mark in St. Louis as in a host of other theaters. Among those are the Repertory Theater of St. Louis, the Black Rep, Shakespeare Festival St. Louis, Opera Theater St. Louis, and the St. Louis Symphony. You may have seen his performances as Tavy on Fiddler on the Roof on the stage of St. Louis, Juror Number 5 on 12 Angry Men in the Repertory Theater, and Abel Frake in State Fair stages St. Louis. Of course, the Muny is Mr. Pisarkiewicz's summer gig. He is a retired educator of high school theater and speech, and is proud to have been born and raised here in St. Louis. So we're going to hear a lot about the Muny today, and hope you enjoy Rich Pisarkiewicz. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you very much for that very eloquent introduction. I hope I can live up to it. Well, we're going to take a little trip to the Muny, which is kind of nice since it's April 1st and it's like 38 degrees out there, and we're hoping that by June 20th, when Legally Blonde makes its premiere at the Muny, we'll have decent weather, and I'm sure we will. But I'll tell you what, after that many years at the Muny, I don't think I'll ever complain about being too hot again after this winter. I said that several times to my wife. I said, next time we do Fiddler and we're wearing our winter coats and we're being thrown out of Anatevka and it's 105 degrees and maybe 135 with the lights on us, I'm never going to complain again about being too hot on the Muny stage. Maybe those large propellers that are the fans for the audience. By the way, that's why they don't turn it on. Lynn and I were talking about this. That's why they don't turn those fans on. They would be so loud that you wouldn't be able to hear your show. But they do turn them on in intermission. And I think they're on before the show too, correct? Right. Thank you. Well, today I'm going to give you a brief history of the Muny, and we're going to go through some of the capital improvements that have been made in the last 10 years. Some of you have been to the Muny, we've talked, and you've seen some of these capital improvements. And then we're going to go over the 93rd season, which opens June 20th this year with Legally Blonde, and Legally Blonde, as I said, will be making its Muny debut. So that's going to be very, very nice. And I want to thank everybody for helping me set up here. My two angels here, thank you very much. Lynn and Nancy helped me set everything up for the presentation here. Our TV crew who are here, thank you very much, and our staff. So I'm ready to go. This is my favorite picture of the Muny. That's not why we start off with it, because Laura Peters, our Director of Marketing at the Muny, this is her favorite picture also. But I shared a story here at our table after we were finished talking about the woes of the Cardinals. But anyway, it's just one game, 161 more games. They'll win most of them. But we were doing South Pacific in 2002, and I was doing the part of Stew Pot, and there's a line in Stew Pot that mocks Luther Billis, when Luther Billis tells Nellie Forbush that he's able to do her laundry because there was a moon at night. And Stew Pot looks up and goes, "There was a moon," and mocks Luther Billis, and all the Seabees go, "There was a moon." Well, during that night, during that week, that moon was sitting right on top of that light booth where the follow spots are coming out, and I thought, nowhere else can you do theater and have that happen on that line at this particular time and see that moon like that. So it was truly a Muny moment. But let's go back in the beginning. This, one of the most important things that make the Muny so wonderful is its wonderful natural setting. Now this particular picture, we got to go back to where the Muny first started. This gentleman right here is standing what would be center stage today, and we're looking at this picture from the audience. And of course the bridge in the back is crossing the River de Pere, which in 1930 was put in a culvert and still runs under the Muny today. Rumor has it this gentleman standing center stage is Mayor Henry Keel from St. Louis. Now, in 1916, the first show done on what would become the Muny stage was produced. And this is Shakespeare's As You Like It. Now, we weren't the Municipal Theater Association yet. This is where the Muny would eventually produce. A couple of things I want to point out. Look at the orchestra over here, which would be stage right, house left, over on the side. And look at the folding chairs, all set up by the Parks Department. I don't know how many we held then, but it was close to 10,000. Improvements in the theater and staging area took place in 1917 when the World Advertising Federation met in St. Louis. And a more permanent seating area and a more permanent stage was built at that time in 1917. And they used real horsepower in getting the materials there. And interestingly enough, the concrete that was poured in 1917 lasted until 2001 with absolutely no need of repair until then. And that's something. In 1919, the Municipal Theater Association was formed. And the Municipal Theater Association is the official name of the Muny. This simple stage here was the setting for several shows, including our first show, Robin Hood. And I might add, just a little personal note, my grandmother had a summer job in the box office for Robin Hood that very first year. And I always knew that. I thought, wow, that's very cool. Maybe I'll use it in a presentation someday. They put on Robin Hood, Bohemian Girl, and The Mikado, the Gilbert and Sullivan musical. 1919 was the inaugural season for the Muny as we know it today. And it's very important because we're beginning our 93rd season this year, and we're getting very close to 100. And my goal is to be on that stage at the 100th year anniversary, and this will be my 30th season this summer. As a matter of fact, we were talking over here, I was talking to Richard Bell over here in the food line, that we just got our call this week. We auditioned early March, just got our calls this week, and of course we anxiously await. We go in and audition every year. And this is another audition that I went to. My first audition was in 1972. I've been auditioning every year since then. Haven't made it every year, but I've been auditioning every year since then. And I'm going to be in Kiss Me Kate, the second show of the season, the fourth show of the season, Singin' in the Rain, and then the last show of the season, Bye Bye Birdie. And Bye Bye Birdie is going to be a very poignant time for the Muny because it is the final show of our current producer, Mr. Paul Blake. And Paul came in 22 seasons ago with a show called Bye Bye Birdie. And I was in that show for him, and I simply wanted to do, if nothing else this summer, I wanted to be standing on that stage, closing night, singing Old Lang Syne for the season and for Paul. And I better be careful because I'm getting choked up about it right now, even as I speak. As a matter of fact, today, April 1st, marks the first day on the job for Mr. Mike Isaacson, who will be succeeding Mr. Blake next year. And so April 1st is a big day for the Muny and for this incredible future that the Muny has too. Now, technical improvements began almost immediately on the Muny stage. In 1923, the first sound system was introduced. Now, we joked earlier, if we couldn't get a microphone or anything like that, I would just have to project. And I think Lynn said, well, you're an actor, you ought to be able to do that. He said it nicely, though, not the way I just said it. And I said, wow, I said, that's great. I said, for the Muny, I said, the first 5 or 6 years, they didn't have a sound system. You really had to project from that space to 10,000 seats. And you think, gosh, how did they do that? Well, they solved all that in 1923. Suspended above the stage are 5 bullhorns. That was the sound system for the Muny stage. So you still had to project up to the bullhorns, and maybe some of them will get out for you. Now, the world's largest turntable was built in 1930. Now, this particular turntable would not have happened if it wasn't for the Schuberts. And the Schuberts, who were producing in St. Louis at the time, really pushed for this particular turntable because it would make scene changes that much quicker. You would have a scene set up on the downstage half of the turntable and another scene on the backstage half. And they would start that rotation, which takes, by the way, 45 seconds for an entire rotation. And they said, 45 seconds? That's great. Wow, that would be so fast. Because what they used to do was they used to turn flash lights into the audience, causing people to go like this while they were changing sets. And I think since this turntable came in, I don't know about you, but it's just as interesting watching those scene changes and the movement of our stagehands going in and out with these things. It's very, very exciting and interesting. So this is a 48-foot turntable, and it was built in 1930. And if you're on that turntable during a scene change, you need to step off of it. And I'm thinking about Showboat last summer during the New Year's Eve party when when Magnolia is singing at the Trocadero. Well, that scene change happens, that rotation happens, and you have to step off of a revolving turntable onto the stage proper. And it's interesting to see people that are on stage for their very first time on the turntable and how they just, are not able to navigate it. And of course, after a lot of years there, you know how to work that and just step off in character, because you can be seen. In 1935, a new catenary was installed, and this particular catenary supported the lights and the sound. This is 1935. Look at the changes in the theater. This, of course, is later than 1935, but I wanted to show you the lights and sound instruments up there, right above the orchestra seating. Now, one thing that this picture does show, it shows the beautiful sylvan setting of the natural setting of the theater itself. And we do incorporate these trees and this natural surrounding into many of our shows. Sometimes it doesn't quite fit, but the audience is very forgiving because it's such a beautiful place. But it is fun to incorporate that, and our set designers do a nice job of that. But this whole natural setting in the Muny is very unique. Aren't many theaters like that. And then in 1961, 28-foot booms were installed instead of curtains. Now these booms are very, very flexible. By that I don't mean you can go up and move them. I mean it allows for the directors to do a lot of flexible staging as far as setting up set pieces. I might add another personal note. My Uncle Benny, who was an iron worker in St. Louis, worked on these steel girders for these booms when they went in 1961. I just had to throw that in because Uncle Benny, you would like that, I said that. But it also makes set changes that much faster. Now let me show you how it works. This particular scene is how the Muny looks today. This slide is actually from our 2005 production of Beauty and the Beast. This is boom 1 closed. Now boom 1 is our furthest downstage boom. By downstage I mean closest to the audience. And of course you can play scenes in front of boom 1, and we do that many times. Now you'll see the apron of the stage is arched. So the largest depth you have is center stage, which is about 18 feet. Behind this, we have another boom that is also set up for another scene. So we open boom 1, we reveal boom 2, and this is Maurice in the forest. He's lost in Beauty and the Beast, and the wolves are surrounding him. But behind that, and that's St. Louis and Ken Page there as Maurice in 2005, who I thought also was in last season's Beauty and the Beast. And then, of course, Ken goes off stage right, being lost, and then comes upon the castle when boom 2 opens. And that's been set up since the beginning of the show. And it's just a matter of getting to it. So that's the kind of flexible staging that our boom curtains allow us to do. Now you have to be very careful. The booms are now computerized, which means that once they get started, a button gets pushed and they start in, and they don't stop right away. And they come in and they've got flashing lights. If you've ever seen these booms close from your seating, they've got flashing lights all along that border. And those flashing lights are there because of an incident in 1972 when Ann Miller was on stage, and was leaving the stage. And you got to understand, you're going from full lights to a blackout. And these boom curtains are closing. So we got the flashing lights, so you see something. I know Ann Miller had an issue with it because she got hit by one of the booms in 1972. And then Rue McClanahan, who I did Annie with in 1994, was night blind. And whenever she would go to a blackout, she had to have a dresser come out and grab her and take her off stage because she couldn't see anything. And we were really worried about the fact that, she would have a problem here with these boom curtains. Well, I played Drake in that show, and there were many times when I went off stage with Miss Hannigan, so I would be assigned to guide her to her dresser to get her to that point. So a lot of things go on stage that you don't quite know, and not that you would as an audience member. So these boom curtains are very, very serious. They are marked on stage. You can't see them here, but there are dotted lines that give you the path of the booms. So if you don't see the booms, you at least know whether you're standing on a dotted line or not, and to get down or up from those. Now, in the beginning, these wooden structures were the summer offices of the Muny. And then along 1930, they were replaced by these. Now this is looking a little bit more like what the Muny looks like today. And in the late 1950s, we get what we have today in a front facade of the Muny. The ticket office is right in there. The box office is right there. So you buy your seats in there. If they're not the night of the show, you buy your seats there. If you are in the night of the show, there are, I think, 6 windows there to help everyone. One's a will call window. And that actually, I said 1950s, I meant 1930s, because in 1939, this particular construction marked the end of the Depression for the Muny. And it was a WPA project that built this. Now these pergolas that wrap all around the Muny, and they're just absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite places to eat lunch during rehearsal is to come out and sit on one of these concrete benches on all sides. But they serve 2 purposes. Not only do they give you a nice entry into the Muny, but these pergolas can hold an entire audience during inclement weather. It's crowded, and I know that. But in closing night, Hello Dolly in 1977, which was before I started working there, Carol Channing was here. And she was the original Dolly Levi on Broadway. She was here in 1977. My wife and I just got married. We came Sunday night with my in-laws to see Carol Channing and Hello Dolly. We spent the entire evening under one of these pergolas, and the show never did open. So I never got to see Carol Channing do Hello Dolly. Now the Muny stage has supported just about every kind of productions in performance history. However, there are some that the Muny is most famous for. But way back in the beginning, you start off with opera, and you have Carmen, which we have here, or Aida, which is a production I talked about earlier. Then it goes to the operettas, like Sigmund Romberg's Desert Song. Desert Song's been there several times. We did a concert version of Desert Song in 1996, just to see what the operetta appeal would be. And Paul Blake came up with this concert version, and concert versions got real big then. Les Mis has a concert version out. And it didn't draw very well. I was there, we only did it 2 nights. I think we drew like 2,500 people. So the whole operetta thing, well, okay, that's over. And that's why you haven't seen an operetta since 1996. And then there's shows like Music in May, which also was an operetta. And you'll know this next one, Babes in Toyland. There's a lot of people on that stage in Babes in Toyland. We've also had world-class dance troops like the American National Ballet with Mikhail Baryshnikov. Rudolf Nureyev has also been on the stage. And in the 1970s, we started a concert series, and such stars as Linda Ronstadt, Neil Diamond. These pictures, I think, were taken about the time of those concerts. Although they're both performing today. And Sonny and Cher. Now, Sonny and Cher, it's very unique. At one of my docent opportunities that I had, I made this statement. I said, Sonny and Cher was the only time the Muny scheduled 2 performances in one night. The only time. And the reason is, within 15 minutes of scheduling the 8 o'clock Sonny and Cher show, it sold out. And they thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This is a one-night gig. So they added a second show at midnight. Sold out. Sonny and Cher. And I said that, threw that out, and the lady afterwards in Q&A said, I was there at the second Sonny and Cher show that night. And I went, were you really? It was so wonderful. I said, gosh, let's talk about that. And we did. And in the 1980s, we had the Moody Blues, the Beach Boys, and James Taylor. And a lot of them are still working on PBS. I know. I watch all those shows with the old music and all that, and wonderful. I just sit and I just love the music. But we did it first at the Muny. And then we get to the shows that Muny does the best. Like this one, a perennial favorite, you'll see it every 5 years, or you have, Meet Me in St. Louis. I'm a big fan of the 1904 World's Fair, and in 2004 we did Meet Me in St. Louis. And I really wanted to do 2 things that summer. I wanted to be in that show, and I wanted to ride the trolley during the trolley number. And I was able to do both. And when we went to the fair at the end of that show, our set designer had a beautiful cutout facade of Festival Hall and the other palaces, and I felt like I was at the fair. And we did fireworks every night in the show in 2004. And I just felt like I was there at the fair every night. Meet Me in St. Louis in Forest Park 100 years after the fair was there. Another Muny moment. The King and I, and that's the House of Uncle Thomas. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and that's Eric Kunze, Muny favorite. And then we have world premieres like White Christmas. White Christmas had its world premiere at the Muny in 2000, and then the estate and family of Irving Berlin wanted to get that show, wanted to make it a holiday favorite, and wanted to get it to New York, and it eventually did do that in 2005 after its reworking here at the Muny in 2000. Every year we have something for the kids. Peter Pan, that's Muny favorite Christian Probst right there is Michael. Oh, sorry about that, hit the wrong clicker. And Showboat. Now this particular Showboat was the most produced show at the Muny. Last summer we did Showboat for the 15th time. It's the most produced. If anybody ever asks you that, if you're looking at Show Me St. Louis and they say, what's the most produced? And they're giving away something. Last week they said, how many days did it take to build the Muny? It took 47 days. That was the answer to them. But I couldn't call in because I work there. But Showboat, last summer's Showboat, just won the Kevin Kline Award Monday night for the best musical produced in professional theaters in St. Louis. And it was the 15th time that it appeared at the Muny. But way back in 1930, during the first time, guess who the first Captain Andy was? And Florence Ziegfeld allowed this actor to come to St. Louis to do Captain Andy in Showboat. I had a hand over here. W.C. Fields, there he is, right there. Right from the Ziegfeld stage. Isn't that wonderful? And then in 1931 to 1933, we had a little stock baritone by the name of Archibald Leach, who went on to become Cary Grant. And there he is in a publicity shot from the Muny. And stock baritone meant that he was one of the ensemble members. And he would take a role here and there, much the same way that I do. Then in 1938, we had a show called Gentlemen Unafraid. And this tense moment by these cadets here, there's somebody in the middle of that that's very familiar. Now look at all these people. Well, I don't know that guy. I don't know Red Skelton. 1938, Gentleman Unafraid. Now in 1919 in Robin Hood, there was a young St. Louis and a young boy that was taken to the Muny that very first night of the Muny to see Robin Hood by his aunt. Lived in St. Louis. And in 1940, he made his Muny debut in The American Way. Since then, he has performed as Fagin in Oliver. He has performed as Mr. Applegate, the devil, in Damn Yankees. Vincent Price. In our 75th anniversary, he wrote a letter to the Muny stating that he was there first at the opening night of the Muny and was taken there by his aunt. In 1958, reprising his Broadway starring role, the role that really put this gentleman on the map, he came back to the Muny to do it, Mr. Bob Hope in Roberta. At the time, his daughter Linda was a student at St. Louis University. Linda went on to produce all of his TV shows. If you look at TV shows, they're produced by Linda Hope. Well, she was also in that show. So it was a family affair in 1958 in Roberta. 1968, we had Call Me Madam with Ethel Merman. 1968, let's do the math. That was the 50th anniversary season. I'm saying that because wait till you see all these people that came to the Muny in 1968. One of his many performances, Robert Goulet in Carousel. He was also there in Kiss Me Kate. Also did Camelot there, but not as Lancelot. He did Arthur. Yes. In 1968, ooh, there's that year again, Carol Brady, Florence Henderson was in The Sound of Music. Florence Henderson came back several times. Bells Are Ringing in 1979. 1980, she was in South Pacific. That was my first show at the Muny. In 1981, she was in Annie Get Your Gun. And in 1980, it was really amazing. I was on the East platform, which is now the Culver Pavilion. It was a rehearsal space. And we were doing Bloody Mary, and I was dancing with Mark Krapinski as one of the Seabees, and we were doing this, Bloody Mary is the girl I love. And I was really into it. I looked up, and there was Florence Henderson right there, looking at me. I mean, closer than this gentleman here. And I completely forgot my steps, forgot my words, forgot everything. And Mark just kind of held me up during the rest of the dance. She came up to me, she goes, I don't know who you are, but don't ever leave this business because your face says it all. My face says it all. She goes, yes, you have to do this business because of your face. And I thought that was a nice compliment. At the time I didn't, but now that I'm as old as I've always looked, now I get it. And in 1974, I Do with Rock Hudson and Carol Burnett. That's a two-person show where this couple goes through the ages. And I would have liked to have seen this. I did see I Do years later with John Davidson and Lucy Arnaz. They did it. 1983, Yul Brynner was there in The King and I got to see it. And I thought, oh. I mean, there are some things that you just have to see in life, and this is one of them. Yul Brynner doing The King and I. He didn't phone it in, nothing like that. He was the king from beginning to end. And at the end of the show, not to give it away, but that last scene, I just teared up. And this was 1983. In 1974, this gentleman decided that he was going to go on a summer stock tour to set up a trust fund for his kids. And he said, what can I do here? He said, well, let's take the Eugene O'Neill play, All Wilderness. The musical version is Take Me Along. I'd like to do Sid. And so Gene Kelly in 1974 played the Muny as part of his summer stock tour. And I was there at box seats. I don't know how I got him, but I was watching him and I saw his dance. And to this day, this is my absolute favorite performer. This is why I'm in this business right here, because of this gentleman. Every year in rehearsal, when we finally get to the stage on the Saturday night, midnight tech rehearsal, I walk over to the spot that I saw him do that dance, and I stand there, and it's one of those, because he's the reason I'm there. And I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to see him perform. And from what I know, there are people there that obviously remember it when he was there. He said the nicest person you'd ever want to meet. 1968, the Broadway company of Hello Dolly took a hiatus from Broadway to come to the Muny for 2 weeks to celebrate their 50th anniversary. Cab Calloway as Horace Vandergelder, Pearl Bailey as Dolly Levi. And they came to the Muny in 1968. In 1980, Debbie Reynolds came with her show, The Debbie Reynolds Show. 4 years before that, she was here in Irene. And during a rain delay in Irene, musicians and everyone left the stage. Debbie Reynolds came out with an umbrella, a cappella, and sang Singin' in the Rain and other favorites from MGM musicals for 30 minutes and entertained the crowd during a rain delay. Debbie Reynolds. There she is, Carol Channing in Hello Dolly in 1977, the one I didn't get to see. And in 1971, called This Is Show Business, we have Dorothy Lamour on the left, Cheetah Rivera in the center, and a St. Louisan on the right, Betty Grable. In 1971, called This Is Show Business, and it was a review. There's Pearl Bailey as Hello Dolly in 1968. In 1975, the Muny tried something. Let's see how non-musicals work on this stage. With a unit set, a New York apartment, let's see how it works. And they did The Odd Couple with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall. Now, Tony Randall has been on the Muny stage many times as Harold Hill in The Music Man. He has done Phineas Fogg in Around the World in 80 Days. But this play played the Muny stage. And I went that night, and it was very strange because, if you know, the Muny stage is 104 feet across. And this New York apartment took up about 36 of those feet in center stage. So when you're walking on to make an entrance, you're walking, do the math, 35 feet to get to the doorway to get in. And we saw every pre-entrance in the show. It was a strange concept, and they haven't done it since. Also in 1974, the Andrews Sisters had a tour out called Over Here. But one thing about this show is there were a lot of people in the chorus that sort of became big names. You got Mary Lou Henner right here. You got Treat Williams right there. And you got this guy right here just kind of stealing the thunder of the Andrews Sisters. Yep, John Travolta. But really, there's another indispensable element in the Muny, and I mentioned this earlier, and I thank you for your support. It's the audience. And we're going into our 93rd season. Over 52 million people have seen a show at the Muny, but you know what? Almost 10 million of them have seen it for free. As part of the 1,672 free seats, every night set up in a trust fund by Mayor Keel in the very beginning so that anyone and everyone could come to the Muny and see a show for free if they wanted to. And I love this picture because, look at that. We've got her pushed up there watching that particular show from the free seats. This is an absolute beautiful picture. People come to enjoy, and this is actually taken from our new light booth, to enjoy an evening of theater in the park. But actually, in the 1990s, the Muny was beginning to show its age, and we needed to do some repairs. We did some capital improvements under the direction of our president, Mr. Denny Reagan, our board of directors, our director of theater operations, Sean Smith, George Spees, our technical director. And one of the first things we did was we repaired the turntable. And the turntable was 67 years old when we did this in 1997. And it used to be that the turntable had grown to the point where there was a lip on it for about 1.5 inches where it met the stage. And I know that because in Showboat 1986, I broke my ribs on it. Because we were doing a fight scene, I was playing Pete, and I was getting beat up by Stephen Baker, the handsomest leading man. And we fell to the stage, and I cracked my ribs, and we were still going to go to Dallas and do 2 weeks. So I had to wrap up my ribs and go out there and do this fight every night. Now, it's perfectly flush with the rest of the stage, and I'm so thankful for that. The concession stands, which were built in 1951, also were renovated. And now I understand you can get everything at every stand. I like that look, though. Very nice look. In the grassy area just to the east of the theater, and that's the east rehearsal platform over there behind the fence. This is the fountain area. That was renovated and re-landscaped to become the welcoming plaza. And there's our bricks that you can purchase. I told my wife when I'm finished at the Muny, I want to make sure that I get my name on a brick right there so something says that I was there for however long I ended up being there. And now that's on television, so somebody has to do that. Okay. And this, in the year 2000, Forest Park Forever and the city of St. Louis got together and transfigured the entire pagoda circle. And this makes probably the most beautiful front door of any theater. It's absolutely beautiful. And in 2001, the seats that were installed in the early 60s were replaced. And as I said before, the concrete was still good, just had to be patched and resurfaced, but basically they used the same concrete. In 2003, Muny audiences that were used to seeing this when they would park in the upper parking lot and come in through the different two sides or use the free seats, saw that. What they get now is the beautiful Liechtenstein Plaza. A lot of times we'll have pre-show entertainment up there, and it's a beautiful way to enter the theater from the upper hill. And in 2007, the east platform, which is a rehearsal platform, and it still is during the day, became our Culver Pavilion, and it is the on-site restaurant for our subscribers, and it is available for rental for other activities. As a matter of fact, my daughter is considering it for her wedding reception next year. And then also in 2007, Orthwein Hall was built backstage. This used to be a storage area. There was nothing there. That's where they stored all the old sets. And then they decided that they would build, and they got a couple of very nice endowments, and they would build an indoor rehearsal space. So for the first time in Muny history, actors could rehearse in air conditioning. Now downstairs is the McDonald's studio, and it's two different rehearsal platforms where we have our music rehearsals. And upstairs is Emerson, and Emerson Hall, the Emerson studio is a scaled down version of the Muny stage with one whole wall of mirrors for the dancers and for staging, so we could look at it and see what our blocking and everything looks like. And a lot of times if it gets to 100, 102 degrees, we'll go into Emerson and we'll work there. Normally we'd work on the east and west platforms because that is the full size of the stage. And it's a big adjustment to go from Emerson to the stage if you don't have the east and west platform experience in between. So we do get our outside work, but this is very nice. Also, it provides a place for the Muny teens and Muny kids to rehearse. And it's also used for dressing areas for them during productions. And it's so nice because they used to have to dress in a big tent backstage, which was very hot. This is very nice for them. So that brings us to the 93rd season. We're going to kick off with the Muny premiere of Legally Blonde from June 20th to 26th. Yes, it is the musical version of the movie. And interestingly enough, our new executive producer, Mr. Mike Isaacson, is a Tony Award for producing this show in New York. So this is one of his particular award-winning properties. Kiss Me Kate is second, June 27th to July 3rd. Now look at that July 3rd. That's the Friday before the 4th of July. Normally in the past years we've avoided that. We're going right up to the 3rd. We think we're okay. But we are going to avoid July 4th and July 5th, and we're going to have a very strange, different kind of thing for the Muny. We're going to open Little Mermaid on Wednesday, July 6th. And we're going to go through the following Thursday, July 14th. So it's going to be a Wednesday through Thursday performance schedule. So it's a little bit longer. You've got your 9 performances. And it is the children's show that year as far as bringing your family and bringing your kids to look at it. My granddaughter has always said, she's already said, the Muny is doing the Little Mermaid for me. And thousands others, but right, Dylan, we're gonna go to that. So that's, I wanted to point that out, that it is opening on a Wednesday night, July 6th, and that's different. Then Singing in the Rain, July 18th through July 24th. I know that I'm in that, don't know what I'm doing yet. We never find that out until we get there. But that's your fourth show. Fifth show, Little Shop of Horrors, and it's been 20 years since we've done Little Shop of Horrors. And it's a really nice score. It's a very fun, rocking kind of score. They do some great things with the plant, and I know that they augment the cast, and those plant tentacles have a tendency to go out into the audience of the Muny. So if you're there during Little Shop of Horrors, you may get eaten up by Audrey too here. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, August 1st through August 7th. This is many times now that it's been to the Muny. First time was 1978 with Howard Keel and Jane Powell. Actually came in and reprised their movie roles at the Muny in 1978. And the last show is Bye Bye Birdie, and I think I told you how important that is for those of us that have been there for a long time. Paul Blake will also be directing that show, and it is his last show. It was his first show, and it's going to be finishing a 22-year career and going into retirement. And August 8th through August 14th. So what really started out as kind of a nice place to have a picnic actually became the largest outdoor musical theater in the country. And you know, you're in the park like this with the moon shining and a full house and a great show on stage, and it's little wonder that the Muny does stand alone in its greatness. And that really brings us to the end. We'll leave that slide up, and hopefully during this little history that we've done, this little tour we've done, you've got some ideas or some questions and answers, questions that I might have the answers to, or a Muny experience you might want to share. But everybody's speaking at once now, because I know you've got the stories and the questions. There's a 10-day rehearsal period that comes up sometimes. The 11th day is when we open after a 5-hour tech rehearsal in the sunshine on Monday afternoon. We do have to have a Saturday night midnight tech rehearsal because we have to do it at night because of the lights, and there's a show going on the week before, so we wait for the show Saturday night to come down. We start at 12:30, go to 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we go home. They put up the next show for their closing night Sunday, and then they take that show down, put our show up, and we show up on Monday afternoon at noon to do another tech rehearsal in the afternoon on Monday. We open Monday night. Yes, Mr. Bell.
I remember a few years ago hearing a famous singer, now a star, saying he credited the Muny so much for those free seats in the back because being in the same, growing up in St. Louis area, he frequented, he saw every show.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to see it even though they were dirt poor. Do you remember who that was?
I do, but I can't remember the name. He was on Living St. Louis this past week. Did you see it Monday night?
No.
There was a little 10-minute segment on this particular singer. But no, I don't have that name. I'm sorry. I didn't have it then either, because I never worked with him. But if it comes to me, I'll get that. But I've heard that. Many people have said that. An interesting story, Theodore McKell, who had done Fiddler with several times, came out on stage, his first time at the Muny, and he looked out and he said, "I don't believe this place." He just couldn't believe how big it was. And so our Bernardo in West Side Story 1995 was standing on stage his first night going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I said, "What, are you going to count every seat?" And he said, "No, I'm just counting how many Broadway houses would fit in this theater." It's a huge place, almost 11,000 seats. Okay, we're just under 11,000. That was the next question. Yes, sir.
Did, in Showboat, was William Warfield there singing Old Man River?
No, last year was Mick Bell. The last 2 times have been Mick Bell. The time before that was Bruce Hubbard, and it could be that before that Mr. Warfield could have performed there. William Warfield was the one that played Joe and sang Old Man River in the MGM musical movie, who was the head of the vocal department at the University of Illinois for several years, and actually was here in St. Louis in 1974 doing a concert at Forest Park Community College. And I was at that concert, and he was doing art songs and arias, and everybody kind of went, "Oh, okay, well, those are nice, those are great, but let's get to the MGM stuff." and it wasn't on the program. So a lot of people left, and then he came back out and said, now I'd like to do some of my show tunes. And I stayed, and I was like, wow, it was incredible. He did Porgy and Bess, he did Showboat, he did a lot of things. But no, I don't know that he was there. But you know, it's interesting, if you go to the Muny website, muny.org, and go in their archives, you can look up anyone that's performed there, and they'll have a highlight of the shows that they've done. So if William Warfield has been there in Showboat, it would be there. Muny.org, under archives, and just click a letter, and it'll give, I mean, it's a wonderful site. Yes?
Is there or will there be a book on community history?
There, Judy Newmark, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch theater critic, put one out, I think, 4 years ago, and it's hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and she, sometimes during opening night, she'll stay there and sign copies of her book. That's out. There's a 75th anniversary book that's out, and there's a book that was published in 1960 called The Municipal Theater, which is out of print. That's out. So that's 3 books that I know of. We are featured in the New Forest Park book a few years ago. But as far as the Muny history, Judy Newmark's book, simply titled The Muny, and it's all Post-Dispatch photographs taken over the years. It's absolutely wonderful book. So if you don't have it, you know the libraries have it, the bookstores have it. And it's by Judy Newmark. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much. This was really a treat.